Welcome back to Golden Hour Ambient Music Podcast. I'm your host, Collette, aka Gollden, and today you're listening to episode 3, Atmospheric Ambient. These songs are some of my favorite atmospheric ambient tracks, and if you are someone who enjoys ASMR or finds common background noises to be calming and soothing, then I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode. And while the ambient genre is a very diverse genre in general, I tend to choose tracks that encompass meditative and relaxing qualities, offering you the opportunity to maybe find calm and stillness through sound. So all you really have to do is pause and listen and just be open to what you hear and just maybe what you may find. And on a personal level, when I'm creating music or I'm writing music and I'm listening back to my mixes, one of my favorite things to do, which is sometimes intentional and sometimes completely unintentional, is just to listen to my mix while I'm walking outside or I'm on the street or at the beach or at the gym or wherever I am. And it can sometimes even be in like a mall or a restaurant. And I'm just listening back, and all of a sudden I start to hear the outside world kind of interact with the song in my mix that I'm listening to. So maybe I start to hear rain in the background, or birds, or the sound of car screeching, or even the sound of a car going by, and you can hear the music or like the low end bass in that car going by. And then all of a sudden I can hear, a nice little, maybe even backline happening in my music, which I never really thought about before. And then maybe I go home, and when I start to look at my mix and really to listen, I'm like, oh yeah, that would sound great in there as well. So there's this really nice thing that happens when you're listening back to your music and your mixes, and the influence that the outside world can have on your music. So me, myself, I often gravitate towards the sounds and that I really like and hear, and some things that might be nice for me might not be nice for you. And I find this a lot in this genre as well. And maybe just something to even consider for yourself. So have you ever thought about like what is the most relaxing sound that you have ever heard, or that if you were to put on a sound to help you fall asleep or to help you relax, like what is that sound, if you've ever considered it? And if you do have one in mind right now, do you have a specific memory about the sound that makes you feel safe or at ease or whatever it does for you? And when I was writing this podcast and I was sitting down just listening to some of my favorite tracks, even some brand new tracks that I had just discovered through for doing my research, and remembering that, oh yeah, I love this song, and to bring it onto the podcast, I just became curious about, I wonder if there is any, hard knowledge or studies that are being done about the connection between the outside world or natural sounds and just sounds and soundscapes in general, and how that affects our bodies, our brains, our nervous systems, even at the conscious and the subconscious level. And I actually came across a 2017 study by researchers out of the University of Sussex, who suggested that playing natural sounds affects our bodily systems that control our fright or flight and rest and digest at atomic nervous systems. The study involved an experiment where participants' brain activity were measured by MRI scanners, and their nervous system activity was monitored by minute changes in their heart rate. And the study resulted in participants who listened to naturalistic and green sounding sounds, so for example, the sounds of nature, showed an increase in rest and digest nervous system activity. What was even more interesting and kind of caught my attention, which was to me more interesting, was the amount of changes in the nervous system activity was very dependent on the participant's baseline state of stress. So, for example, individuals who showed evidence of the greater level of stress in the study showed also the greatest bodily reaction when listening to natural sounds, meaning the more stressed you were, or the more stressed that you are, the more you may be affected positively by the benefit of sound. So just something to maybe consider. So on the flip side of that is also the negative implications of sound, or maybe very irritating background sounds. And right away, sometimes because our minds can be so negative, we automatically think of, the negative effect versus the positive one. So what is the sound that you hate might come more quickly than the sound that you really, really, really like. And when I was researching studies on background sounds, I found this amazing quote by an audiologist from Oregon who goes by the name of Marcia Johnson. And she has this really great quote. She says, "We tend to use our ears like the bottoms of our feet. We don't think of them unless we have a problem." And I can totally relate to this. This is exactly how I feel about when I get in my car and I'm driving, and it's often chaotic. And maybe a few minutes go by, I don't really notice the music because I'm just maybe focused on driving. But as soon as I notice a song that I can't stand, I instantly become like so unbelievably intolerant. And I'm like driving frantically, trying to stop the music immediately and just change the song or change the station. So again, really quick to notice what we don't like versus what we do like. And just like playing on that theme of sound and sensitivity, another just personal example of this is the sound of my old work phone ringer from my last job that I absolutely hated. Would literally make me jump out of my seat as a like complete nervous system response to the tone and the ringtone. And I'm sure many of us can relate to this given the amount of tones and notifications that we have through email, through text, through meeting reminders. So that's enough talking for me, and let's just get into the nice listening. To kick off our atmospheric ambient track is an interesting track by the great Brian Eno. As Eno famously quoted, "Ambient music must be able to accommodate many levels of listening attention without enforcing one in particular. It must be as ignorable as it is interesting." And from the album Ambient 4 on Land, here is a beautiful, unfamiliar wind by Brian Eno.